My name is Russell Crane. And we're all going to hell. My name is Russell Crane. Welcome to a place where dreams were once possible. I live in the United Settlements of America, in a place called Drake City, the new Chicago of this globe, home of the Jewel Tower, where all the buildings are formed in worship of the jeweled star-shaped diamond structure, sort of the last holy grail separate city. You probably never heard of it because it exists on another planet called the Centris, where we, the human race, now settle. Some odd 46 years ago, on Earth, back in the year 2021 to 2036, a man named Lawrence James sent the human race into World War III, which triggered an acceleration in the global climate crisis, the global warming process, which was not due for another 60 years. Unfortunately, it came early. An alien being named Snubius, the ruler of the Centris, made contact with the human race and placed us, including the animals, in these alien bioorganic ships, where the humans were inside of alien organic cocoons, which placed us in cryogenic suspended animation in a 4-year travel from Earth to the Centris. After our arrival, we had to descend inside a docking bay, which allowed humanity to breathe on the planet within that perimeter. But to adapt to the planet's atmosphere, we had to be injected with a vaccine to make us adapt to the air and breathe on this world, and possibly many other planets to come. For a woman who would take the vaccine, it would positively affect her embryo, meaning if she were to have a child, the baby wouldn't need to take a vaccine because it is already inside the female's genes, making the child air adaptable. Humans born on the Centris are called human centrins of human descent. As we began our heritage on the Centris, we built tribal communes. We used alien organic technology to help give us birth to cybernetic technology. Although organic technology was limited to human use, because it was too complex for us to work with. We didn't understand its instruments yet, and we still don't. It is limited to the majority of the human race. The aliens, which are called Centrins, taught us how to live in a world without order, but in a more civilized manner. The Centrins educated us to many things that were honorable, like how to grow live animal-like meat from plants, but healthier without killing any animals themselves, which tastes a lot better and gives no sicknesses. We recreated cybernetic technology. We innovated ourselves better in culture. Each syndicated tribal clan had no rules, but if an issue presented itself regarding space or working together, we would call it the crossover process. It was very much organic in its organization. The crossover process accommodated steps in this order: counseling, analysis, interaction, that is prepared in the counseling, to stay on the same page, time length of communication, collaboration and teamwork, and shared space until it became more organic with speed, which it did many years later. Expansion of the human central culture groups grew immensely, where everything was cybernetic. We assisted people. We learned from each other. We evolved from and beyond Earth. Snubius is a being who many have never seen except for the Earth politicians, which no one knows what happened to them neither. Snubius' organic technology amazingly salvaged by sampling a touch upon what was on Earth and how much it lived through, in between the ground and the sky. Collecting over trillions of information organically, the Centrins and humans educated themselves really excellently, because education was nearly innovative and emphasizes more on hobby, and what students like. And for the teacher's prime focus on in school is the student's liking, whether it be adolescent or not. It was for the student and teacher to relate and counsel each other and learn from each other on what is what and who likes what and who likes to understand one another. That way knowledge and awareness can be a part of culture, as well as not a law to go to school. The plan was not to force anyone to do anything they didn't want to do. School really wasn't even necessary to have. It was just an outdoor activity for people to do. But there was no grade level. School was like a public library. Every once a year, we all would go to a general summit where all ages and heritages would come together and make offers, proposals, bills. We would vote on it. It didn't make any difference if no one didn't vote for it. We would just do it anyway. The summits were only there for community. It was basically a world where life is an ethical hobby. Sanubius wanted to turn this interest into a metropolis and expand it, which is what we did. No one was homeless nor starving. Everyone had a place to live, because it was a sentient need and a health priority. If you wanted a luxurious house, that was up to the person, although it cost a couple of obstacles to get luxury homes, nothing complex. It was free to gain, but it was only for ethical sport. We taught the economists how to collect them as a hobby, to share with others less fortunate, and to inspire prosperity, and it worked. Where so many foundations were laid, everyone was an equal, but to live in a home was free. And food, in order to get food, there were public markets that would serve the greatest food the world has ever seen. And taste, but for purchases. We would have a card where you slide it. Each item people bought was monitored to determine from the cards to have the farmers look at purchases and see what was most popular, and more increasing city small market individual products especially. That way you balance how much food is made. Not to just say we would run out nor have competition, but to slow down fatal heart attacks and a famine. But still, we need food to survive. How the card worked. It was just to scan the barcode. Your name was not on it, but you did have a PIN number though. It was unlimited, but it had to be recharged on the pad after 9 sets of purchases a day, to limit and steady the goods, and to cut down long lines in order to not overcrowd the market tents inside the markets, although it really doesn't work. Most people grow their own live meat and attend markets just for outings. Growing meat became artificial in an organic technological sense, using the fingertips that would scan the minds of what was needed for our cravings, and the ingredients required to be made and grow. That was the only organic tech we had access to for 46 years. We know of our history, culture, religions, protests, wars, agriculture, placed into cybernetic holograms and books, Sanubius placed inside. The Centurions remarkably taught us how to live in peace. But 15 years later, many years later, everything changed. 15 years ago, a computer terrorist group known as the Intermediate Faction launched an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, wiping out everything electronic. The Intermediate Faction crashed people's software, causing everyone to lose everything, pushing them to the breaking point, causing suicides, murders. Not only that, there were multiple violent bombings in the world done by the computer terrorists that hacked into everything electronic, powering it up and exploding it. In America, before the land was declared. It was a shrine in the form of a city, where people would gather for social celebration. Now it is used as an asylum for tribal violence, for government profitable experimentation. It was decayed in dereliction by the intermediate faction. The scary thing about the entire situation was the fact that Cenubius was the one who created the intermediate faction. A rising theocratic party would face a live worldwide broadcast on behalf of Cenubius, announcing that Cenubius was behind the faction's origin, intending for a betrayal. No one could understand why he did it. He caught us all by an ultimate surprise. We never believed it was possible before we looked up to him. Well, they did. But I never considered him to be any kind of idol, because I wanted to know what really happened to the Earth politicians of the old Earth. But to many, Cenubius, it's like he just snapped in his own mind. The intermediate faction went rogue, betraying Cenubius, knowing his true agenda. The intermediate faction continued their oppression for 5 years. Cenubius and his party killed the intermediate faction in their attempt to usurp the theocratic party. Cenubius announced a full-scale international inspection in all people's homes to prevent an uprising attempt. We started to notice an increase in police enforcement and the rise of capitalism. Capitalism on this world is a form of order and diplomacy. It has not yet to become a virus like it was on Earth. Imperative worth-wise, such as economic value. People refused the inspections, triggering 3 years of peaceful protests, triggering police brutality among the demonstrators. Then, they came. The Dark Fleet. They are human in the machine's clothing. Cenubius promised an army of young men that wanted to venture out into space and prepare them for a space war that was to be in secret to the public, to not start a panic that never came to pass. So what he did was he recruited alien thugs that were ordered to brutally place computer programs inside the minds of these young men, beat them, drug them up, counseled them, torturing them, brainwashing them to becoming Dark Fleet soldiers. That is when Cenubius started to give humanity an identity crisis. Cenubius resurrected the old Earth nations, snatching same nationalities and putting them in the same spots of their own kind. Like the United Settlements of America, for instance, dividing it into 95 city settlements, no states, but enforcements that are the authority of the state owned by its police. Cenubius imposed a 9-month famine on the humans and the sentients, running certain vegetation and contaminating some of the food, starving the protests from their abilities to be active. Only the rising rich were able to eat, because they gave their humanity over to Cenubius, sucking up to him, grateful to him for allowing us to live on his world, knowing we could have either been killed or nowhere to go, adrift in space, as I quote. When we used to purchase food from the cars, the entire time the cars and foods were monitored and controlled by the First Bank Corporation. That became the Department of Agriculture, which cut everyone's food accessibility off, causing malnutrition and widespread panic, collaborating with the Department of Environmental Health, which took most of the criticism for the famine, because they demanded for the famine for health benefit cuts, meaning to cut a population down to size to secure the rich who were placed in luxurious condominiums, and delivered organic, technological, exclusive foods to the chosen wealthy. The system would smuggle in. 9 months later, after mass starvation of people couldn't take it anymore. A rebellion known as the Black Genesis Insurrectionist Disorder, led by Suminia Winters, the Raven Goddess of War. The entire mob threatened them. If they leave peacefully and surrender their offices, they'll live. The senators offered a truce. The Mafia denied it. The Mafia assassinated all of the senators, authorizing executive orders from Sanubius and the entire rising theocratic party, signed in blood by Martin Rico. The United Settlements of America belonged to the 37 crime lords of the criminal regime and their lobbyist associates. As Sanubius was done putting together Neo-Russia, the Consulship of United Korea, New Israel, Tashik, Saudi Arabia, the Republic of France, New Africa, Latania, Mexico, New Brazil, Neo-Turkey, New Greece, and many more, almost completing the world with a one-base nation. Sanubius created an international law enforcement agency known as the IBU, the Interception Bureau Unit, and the FBA, the Federal Bureau Agency, thus giving birth to the United Centrist Theocratic Regime, with its dome alien organic hardened structure, as humans would refer to as alien bioorganic technology. It resides on Edwin Bay, the United Nations and districts. The completion has risen. It was Sanubius' way of recreating Earth and playing God, to see how fast he could have done it, and be faster than God and man. He once stated, as his disciples did for him, I, in the form of the mythology in which human society bases itself on, have altered the era and the existence of man, changing the course of their biblical scriptures, prophecies, and instruments, all that behold of the actuality of what is in front of them lies on the ground, but the truth stands on top of the concrete and surrounded the answer. As I have changed the direction of man, no power below me or what I reshape should be bestowed to the humble. For the seed that is attempted to be planted should not bring deliverance upon I. So forth the seer can impose their lives once again, only based on them and their disappointment. Sanubius Lorazillon, Lord of the United Centrist Theocratic Regime. Statement given by Theocrat Jean Perrault on Sanubius' behalf. After that, everyone gave their sentience, human and centron, to Sanubius, as surrender and worship as if he is God the Savior himself. Sanubius foretold 6 new world orders for man and centron to live. The 6th new world order will be lived through eternity. I happen to exist in the 3rd new world order. There was a young man who created a drug called Syphiline. Dez was his name. He was hospitalized by his parents for being manically depressed. He cracked an entrance in the wall of his psych room. He was an excellent electrician and a brilliant mathematician. He created a drug called Syphiline. What Syphiline does is you buy it, put it in the refrigerator for 2 hours, take it out, chop it up, cook it, put it in a tube, put the tube to your nasal, like the bottom end of the tube, lighting the Syphiline up, sniff it, and you got your Syphiline experience. When you sniff Syphiline, it makes contact with your brain, which the brain absorbs, creating a 5-minute simulated selection of what you want. The body goes to sleep, and once the body does, it goes into a virtual simulation. It goes into what is called the unconscious reality, which is a far more complex creation than a dream. It is a different dimension, especially if you don't select the choice in 5 minutes. What it really is exactly, you'll learn soon. When Syphiline is induced for 10 years straight, the brain swells the head, and you die. Des created this drug from a lab kit in a socket wall in the cell. He knew how to fake out the inspectors every time they would check his rooms for contraband. putting up crack pieces to cover his tracks. When his friends would come visit him, he would give them the equation in a secret family visiting room. Des got busted one day, and the wrong people got a hold of his drug and induced too much into him, turning him into a lab rat on the hospital bed in restraints. He died from an overdose and an enlarged tumor in his brain. His parents tried to free him through the court system. Next, they were killed along with his friends. That is when the Cephalon epidemic began. The human race grew to a population of 300 billion people, outnumbering the human census on Earth. The Cephalon epidemic killed 648,971 humans, including the sentients. 24 million people died total. The Cephalon epidemic was imposed by Synuvius. Although his drugs ran rampant, the original drugs that came from Earth, salvaged by Synuvius' alien organic technology, its seeds were artificially duplicated and placed onto Centra's soil due to the planet's atmosphere. The planet gave it intense side effects from the dosage, and more pleasure for the user knowing drugs have become a new commodity in the Centrist culture also. As the New World continues to begin, there's suffering from all around you. You have pimps, prostitutes, wars, corrupt politicians, dope fiends, criminal organizations, drug syndicates, poverty, all to oppress the slum rats. As the rich are called the aristocrats, the poor are called the slum rats.